There's something strange about the way people present their lives now. The way every moment that gets shared has been filtered and framed and carefully composed to look like something worth wanting. You scroll through and everyone seems to be thriving, glowing, living their best life, as they say. And it's hard not to measure your own reality against these curated highlights. Hard not to feel like you're somehow falling short of a standard that didn't even exist a decade ago. The images are so polished, so aspirational. Someone's morning routine that involves meditation and journaling and a smoothie made from ingredients you've never heard of. Someone's workspace with perfect lighting and minimalist decor and a caption about loving what they do. Someone's relationship that looks effortless and romantic, and nothing like the complicated, messy thing that relationships actually are when you're living them day to day. And you know, intellectually, that what you're seeing isn't the whole picture. You know that people only show the good parts, the photogenic moments, the achievements, and the aesthetics, and the versions of themselves they want the world to see. You know that behind every perfect feed, there's a regular life with regular problems, with bad days and insecurities, and struggles that don't make it into the grid. But knowing that doesn't always help. The comparison still happens automatically, this reflexive measuring of your insides against everyone else's outsides. You see someone who seems to have it all together, and you wonder what you're doing wrong, why your life doesn't look like that, why you're still figuring out things they appear to have mastered years ago. The pressure to improve is constant and it comes from everywhere. There's always a better version of yourself you could be working toward, always some area of life that needs optimizing, always another level to reach. Better habits, better routines, better boundaries, better self-care, better productivity, better mindset. The idea that who you are right now, as you are, might be enough, that idea doesn't really exist in this ecosystem. Every version of yourself that you've only been once. That person you were last year, the one who was dealing with whatever you were dealing with then, making the decisions you made with the information and capacity you had, she existed only once, and she's gone now. And the person you are today, right now, in this particular moment of your life, this version also exists only once. You'll never be exactly this again. Tomorrow you'll be different, even if only slightly, and next month and next year you'll be someone else entirely. But there's no time to appreciate any single version because you're always supposed to be becoming the next one, the better one, the one who's finally figured it out. You're supposed to be in constant motion towards some ideal that keeps shifting just out of reach. And the thing about ideals is that they're not real. They're composites, fantasies, versions of life that exist only in imagination and marketing and the carefully constructed narratives people tell about themselves online. The language around mental health has become so common now that it's almost lost its meaning. Everyone talks about anxiety and depression and trauma and healing, and those words get used so casually, so frequently, that they start to feel almost decorative. Someone will post about their anxiety with a beautiful photo and a caption that makes it sound like a personality trait rather than a condition that can be debilitating. Someone else will talk about healing like it's a weekend project, like you can manifest your way out of actual psychological damage. And maybe some of this openness is good. Maybe it's helpful that people aren't hiding their struggles the way previous generations did. But there's something uncomfortable about the way pain gets packaged for consumption, the way someone's real suffering becomes content, becomes part of their brand. The complexity gets flattened, the darkness gets aestheticized, and if you're actually going through something difficult, something that doesn't photograph well or fit into an inspiring narrative, you're left feeling even more alone because even the shared struggles don't feel like yours. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to keep up, from feeling like you're in a race where the finish line keeps moving and everyone else seems to know the route, and you are just running in circles hoping you're going the right direction. You watch people hit milestones that you haven't reached yet, and you tell yourself that everyone moves at their own pace, that comparison is pointless, but the feeling of being behind doesn't go away just because you know it's irrational. And the definitions of success are so narrow, so specific. It's not enough to have a job, it needs to be a career you're passionate about. It's not enough to have relationships, they need to be deeply fulfilling and authentic and growth-oriented. It's not enough to be okay, you need to be thriving, glowing, living your purpose, making an impact. The effort for what counts as a life well lived has become impossibly high, and most people are quietly struggling to reach it while performing confidence that they're already there. You see people who seem successful by conventional measures, and they're talking about their mental health struggles, their burnout, their realization that the life they built doesn't actually make them happy. And you see people who rejected conventional success, and they're talking about their financial stress, their uncertainty, their moments of wondering if they made the right choice. And it starts to become clear that there's no formula, no path that guarantees you'll feel good about your life, no external achievement that will finally make you feel like you're enough. The culture of self-improvement sells the idea that you're just one habit or mindset shift or morning routine away from becoming the person you're supposed to be, from accessing the life you're meant to live. But that implies that who you are now isn't right, that your current life isn't valid, that you're perpetually in a state of not yet rather than already here. And that's exhausting. It's a kind of violence against yourself, this constant rejection of your current reality in favor of some imagined future. Maybe success doesn't have to look like everyone says it looks like. Maybe it doesn't require a certain income, or a certain title, or a certain number of followers, or a certain size apartment in a certain city. Maybe success is just figuring out what actually matters to you, what actually makes you feel alive, or at peace, or like yourself, and then organizing your life around that instead of around what looks impressive to other people.
But figuring out what actually matters to you requires listening to yourself, and that's hard to do when there's so much noise. So many voices telling you who to be, what to want, how to live. So many images of other people's lives making you question your own choices. So many metrics and comparisons and ways to measure yourself that have nothing to do with your actual experience of being alive. The question of what you want, really want, separate from what you think you should want or what would look good or what would make other people impressed or proud, that's a harder question than it seems, because you've been absorbing messages about what constitutes a good life since before you could talk, and separating your authentic desires from all that conditioning is complicated, maybe impossible to do completely. But you can start paying attention to what feels right versus what just looks right. You can notice the difference between doing something because it genuinely engages you and doing something because you think it's what you're supposed to be doing. You can start questioning the assumptions you've been operating under, the beliefs about success and happiness and what it means to be living correctly. Some people find that when they really examine their lives, when they strip away the performance and the pressure and the comparison, what they actually want is simpler than what they've been chasing. Not simpler in a morally superior minimalist way, not as another version of optimization, just simpler in the sense of more aligned with who they actually are, rather than who they think they should be. Maybe what you want is more time, more space, more quiet. Maybe you want fewer commitments and more presence. Maybe you want to stop trying to be impressive and just be comfortable. Maybe you want relationships that don't require you to be anything other than yourself. Maybe you want work that doesn't consume your entire identity. Maybe you want a life that has room for boredom and rest and doing nothing in particular. But those wants don't fit neatly into the narratives you see online. They don't make for inspiring content. They don't signal ambition or growth or living your best life. They're just ordinary human desires for peace and authenticity and not being exhausted all the time. And maybe that's exactly why they're worth paying attention to. The versions of yourself you see reflected back in other people's reactions, in the metrics and the feedback and the performance of your life online, those versions are incomplete. They're based on fragments, on curated moments, on the parts of yourself you choose to share. The full version, the one that exists in your private thoughts and your mundane moments and your regular days, that's the one you actually have to live with. And if you're constantly performing, constantly curating, constantly trying to make your life look like something worth documenting, you lose touch with that fuller version. You start living for the story you'll tell about your life, rather than for the actual experience of living it. You start making choices based on how they'll appear, rather than how they'll feel. You optimize for optics instead of for reality. There's something lost in that transaction, some quality of presence, of authenticity, of just being alive without narrating it or framing it or thinking about how it will be perceived. Some ability to have experiences that are private, that are just for you, that don't need to be shared or validated or turned into content. The pace of everything has accelerated to the point where you're supposed to process and post and move on to the next thing before you've even fully experienced the current thing. You're supposed to have takes and opinions and reactions immediately, supposed to be constantly producing, constantly sharing, constantly available. And that pace doesn't leave much room for depth, for reflection, for letting things settle before you decide what they mean. You can feel the cost of it sometimes, this constant state of partial attention, this fragmentation of focus. You're reading something while also monitoring notifications, while also thinking about what you need to do next, while also comparing yourself to someone's post you saw earlier. You're never fully present because part of you is always somewhere else, always checking, always consuming, always in motion.
And maybe you've tried to change it. Maybe you've deleted apps or taken breaks or set boundaries. And maybe it helped for a while, but the pull is strong. The culture is designed to keep you engaged, to make you feel like you're missing something if you're not constantly connected. The fear of being left out, of being left behind, of losing relevance or connection, or whatever it is you're afraid of losing, that fear is real, even when you know intellectually that most of what you're consuming doesn't actually matter. The question isn't really about whether social media is good or bad, whether comparing yourself to others is avoidable or not. The question is what you're willing to do about the fact that the way things are set up right now, the way the culture is structured, it's making you feel worse about yourself. It's creating impossible standards. It's stealing your attention and your peace and your ability to just exist without performing. You could spend your whole life chasing the next version of yourself, the better version, the one who finally has it together. Or you could just be this version, right now, with all its imperfections and uncertainties and ways it doesn't match up to anyone's ideal. You could stop treating your current self like a rough draft and start treating her like the only version that actually exists, because she is. The life you're living right now, today, in this moment, this is your real life, not the aspirational version you're working toward, not the carefully edited version you show other people, but this messy, complicated, ordinary version that's happening right now. And if you spend all your time focused on some future ideal, you miss the fact that this is it. This is what you have. This is what's real. Maybe the better version of yourself isn't a future achievement. Maybe it's just the version that stops trying so hard to be better, that stops measuring herself against impossible standards, that stops performing and just exists. Maybe the best thing you could do for yourself isn't to optimize or improve or hustle towards some next level, but to just be here as you are and decide that's enough. Not because you've given up or stopped caring or settled for less, but because you've realized that the chase itself is the problem, the constant striving, the perpetual inadequacy, the belief that happiness and peace and worthiness are always one more achievement away. That's what's keeping you from actually experiencing your life.
You don't need permission to stop performing. You don't need permission to step back from the comparison, from the pressure, from the exhausting work of trying to be impressive. You can just stop. You can just choose differently. You can decide that your life, as it actually is, with all its ordinary moments and imperfect realities, is the one you're going to pay attention to. And maybe that means you engage with everything differently. Maybe you share less, consume less, perform less. Maybe you protect your attention more carefully, guard your peace more fiercely, question the narratives you've been accepting without examination. Maybe you build a life that's designed for actually living rather than for looking good from the outside. The noise is always going to be there. The comparisons, the pressure, the endless stream of other people's curated perfection. But you can turn down the volume. You can choose what you pay attention to. You can decide that your own quiet inner voice, the one that knows what you actually need and want and value, that voice matters more than all the external ones telling you who to be. And maybe when you do that, when you really listen to yourself instead of to everyone else, what you find is simpler than you expected. Maybe what you actually want isn't that complicated. Maybe it's just to feel okay, to have some peace, to stop fighting yourself, to live in a way that feels true, even if it doesn't look impressive. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything.